Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. My name is Lena. I'm 29. And if I had to name the emotion pressing on my chest right now, the one I can't shake no matter how many deep breaths I take or how many friends I vent to, I'd probably call it shame. Or regret. Or something soft and slippery in between, like the residue of pride that won't let me admit I might have played myself. This story isn't really about sex, even though it kind of started with sex. Or the lack of it, I guess. It's about wanting to be wanted. It's about timing, ego, and the quiet way two people can drift from something beautiful into something unrecognizable, and not even realize it until they're standing on opposite sides of the bed, pretending to sleep. I told Daniel I wasn't ready to date when we first started talking. I was still coming out of what I jokingly, but not really jokingly, called my 304 phase. You know, the whole reclaim your body, take no shit, hyper-independent era. I thought I needed that. Honestly, I did need that. But when someone genuinely good shows up in the middle of that mess, it messes with your script. Daniel was good. Better than good, actually. Thoughtful. Patient. The kind of man who opened doors without making it feel like a performance. He had this calm energy that made me feel settled. Seen. When he touched me, even in small ways, like brushing my hair behind my ear or pressing his palm into the small of my back while we waited in line at a food truck, it wasn't just affection. It was anchor. In the beginning, we had this rhythm. Not fireworks, but something warm and steady. We'd kiss and I'd feel it in my ribs, not just my lips. We'd spend Sundays wrapped up in each other, soft skin, long conversations, his hand absently tracing circles on my thigh while we watched movies we weren't really watching. But the longer we stayed in that space between casual and committed, the more I started to feel like I was fading. Not because he treated me badly, God, no, but because I had one foot out the door the whole time, clinging to some illusion of independence I was too scared to put down. I thought if I let him fully in, I'd lose myself again. Become one of those women who disappear into their relationships. And I had worked so hard not to be that. So I made sure to remind him, often and with a little too much edge, that I wasn't looking for anything serious. That I needed more time. That I wasn't ready. And he respected that. At first. But then things started to shift. Slowly. Quietly. He stopped reaching for my hand when we walked together. His good morning texts got shorter, not rude, just efficient. One night, we were lying in bed and I rolled over to tuck myself into his chest like I always did. But this time, his arm felt more like a shelf than an embrace. Stiff. Dutiful. Not there. And the sex? It didn't stop, but it changed. There was a kiss one night, just a kiss, where I leaned in and he kissed me back, but there was this half-second pause. Like his mouth was moving but his mind wasn't with me. I pulled back and looked at him. He smiled like everything was fine. I smiled back. And we both pretended we didn't feel the crack. That was the moment, I think. The exact moment I realized something had changed. It wasn't dramatic. No big fight. No betrayal. Just a kiss that didn't land right. A moment that passed too easily. And suddenly I saw it, the space that had grown between us while I was so busy trying to guard mine. I thought by holding off on commitment, I was protecting something sacred in me. But I never considered what it might cost him, to keep showing up for someone who wouldn't name what you were, or say they wanted more, or even ask what he wanted. And now? I don't know. Now I lie next to him and I'm not even sure he wants to hold me anymore. And maybe worse, I'm not sure I deserve it if he does. Daniel's a physical therapist. The kind who remembers his patients' kids' names, offers them water before they ask, and always smells faintly like eucalyptus and clean laundry. He has strong hands, grounded, capable. He lives in his body, and that's how he loves, too. He touches to connect. Me? I live in my head. I feel things deeply, but I don't always say them. I want words before touch. I need to talk before I can be soft. Which is maybe why this whole thing started to unravel in the spaces between our differences, in the way we tried to love each other in languages neither of us was fluent in. One Saturday morning, a few weeks after that kiss, I was sitting on the kitchen counter in one of his t-shirts, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee and rereading a text from my sister that had stirred something in me. Something heavy. She was pregnant. Second kid. Stable marriage. And I felt behind. Unanchored. Like I was floating through my own life without any real plan. Daniel came up behind me, slid his arms around my waist, and kissed the side of my neck. His lips were warm. Gentle. Familiar. But instead of melting into it, I stiffened. Not on purpose, it was like my body flinched before my brain caught up. I hadn't said anything about how I was feeling, hadn't shared the ache the text brought up. And he, in his sweet, oblivious way, tried to make me feel better the only way he knew how. "Morning, baby," he murmured. "You smell like heaven." I forced a smile. "You always say that." He pulled back just a little, sensing the coolness in my tone. "Is that a bad thing?" "No," I said too quickly. I'm not in the mood right now." His hand slipped away from my waist. He didn't say anything. Just walked to the sink and started rinsing out his coffee mug, the clinking of ceramic louder than it needed to be. I wanted to explain. To say that I wasn't rejecting him, just the moment, that I needed talk more than touch that morning. But I didn't. I sat there, perched on the edge of the counter like a scared little girl, and said nothing. Later that night, we went out to dinner. A small Italian place we used to love. But everything felt tight. Tired. We talked about work, whether we should order wine. But not us. Never us. That felt too risky, like tugging at a thread that might unravel the whole thing. After dinner, in the car, he reached over and put his hand on my thigh. It was a good gesture. A kind one. But it felt like a script. Like, here's the part where I reach out and she leans in and everything feels okay again. But it didn't. My skin wasn't buzzing. My heart wasn't soft. Still, I placed my hand over his, because I didn't know how to say what I needed without sounding like a cliché. Or worse, ungrateful. I think that's the worst part. He is trying. In his way. He kisses me when I walk through the door, massages my shoulders when I'm stressed, rubs my back in bed even when I'm too tired to reciprocate. But it all feels like it's happening to me, not with me. And when I finally tried to talk about it, to actually explain that I felt disconnected, that I needed more from him emotionally, more conversations, more space to be vulnerable, it didn't land right. He looked confused. Hurt. "I'm doing everything I can," he said, voice low but tight. "You didn't want commitment. You didn't want pressure. You said you needed time. So I gave you all the time. I gave you me, Lena. I don't know what else you want." I didn't know how to answer that. Because I wasn't sure myself. Maybe I wanted to be chased a little. Fought for. Maybe I thought if I held out long enough, he'd love me hard enough to prove I could be safe and independent at the same time. But he wasn't chasing anymore. He was walking. Slowly. Carefully. Away. And I was still stuck in the doorway, wondering if I'd slammed it too soon. It's Thursday night, and we're both home early for once. Daniel's in the kitchen making dinner, something with garlic and lemon I can smell from the couch. I'm scrolling aimlessly on my phone, half watching an episode of a show we used to binge together, but now it just plays in the background, like white noise. He's humming a little to himself. Barefoot. In old sweatpants that hang low on his hips. He looks good. Familiar. The kind of man you come home to, and I am home. That's what's so confusing. Dinner's almost ready, he says, glancing over his shoulder with that easy smile. Wanna taste the sauce? I nod and get up, walking into the kitchen, leaning against the counter. He holds out a spoon, and I taste it. Good, I say, but my voice is flat, too neutral. I can tell he notices. He sets the spoon down, dries his hands on a towel, and steps closer. There's this long pause, not uncomfortable, exactly, but thick. Come here, he says gently, slipping his arms around my waist. I let him pull me in, because I don't know how to say no without breaking something. His body is warm. His chest against mine should feel grounding. But inside, I'm stiff. Then he kisses me, soft at first, then a little deeper, with that low sound in his throat like he's hoping it'll go somewhere. His hands slide down to my lower back. One drifts a little lower, a casual squeeze on my butt, playful, familiar. And that's when it happens. The recoil. It's microscopic, a flinch no one would clock unless they were looking for it. But I know he felt it. He pulls back just a little. Looks at me. What? He asks, his tone careful. Nothing, I say too quickly. I try to smile, but it doesn't stick. I just wasn't expecting it. We've done that 1,000 times. Yeah, I know. Silence stretches between us. The sauce starts to bubble behind him, but neither of us moves to stir it. He sighs. Not annoyed, just tired. You don't want me touching you anymore? I look away. That's not what I said. Then what are you saying, Lena? Because lately, it's like I can't even kiss you without it feeling off. It's not you, I mumble. I'm just, in my head. In your head, he repeats, and there's a flicker of frustration there now. I don't know what to do with that. You don't talk to me. You don't open up. You don't initiate anything. And when I do, you shut down. I want to yell that I do talk, just not the way he wants. That I'm trying. That maybe I'm still recovering from years of giving my body away too easily, and now every time it becomes physical, I panic, not because I don't want him, but because I can't tell if I'm still protecting myself or just punishing us both. But I say none of it. Instead, I shrug, my throat burning. I don't know what's wrong with me. Daniel stares at me for a moment, then steps back and turns off the stove. The air between us is heavy with garlic and tension. I just miss you, he says, almost quietly, not looking at me. I miss us. I nod, lips pressed tight. Later, when we're sitting at the table in silence, pushing food around our plates, I watch him, the curve of his jaw, the way his fingers twitch like he wants to reach for me but doesn't anymore. And all I can think is, why does everything have to turn into sex? It started with a dinner reservation. One he made without asking. 7:30 at Faro, Daniel said, dropping the name like it was a gift, and maybe it was. Faro was the first restaurant we ever went to together. Candlelight, pressed napkins, the smell of rosemary bread lingering in the air. It used to feel like something sacred. Now it felt like pressure. I'm tired, I said, folding laundry on the bed without looking at him. Long day. His shoulders dropped, but he tried to keep his voice light. Just a couple hours. We haven't done anything together in weeks. We lived together. You know that's not what I mean. He was right, but I didn't budge. And I hated that about myself, the way I'd turned into someone who resented being pursued, even gently. An hour later, I found myself putting on mascara anyway, standing in front of the mirror with trembling hands. I looked at my reflection like I didn't recognize her. The woman who used to be so comfortable in her body, who used to wear confidence like perfume. Now she stood there hollowed out, as if romance had become a performance she wasn't sure how to get right anymore. We sat at the table by the window, the one we'd once laughed at for being too close to the street. Now it felt like we were on display. And that was the problem, wasn't it? I felt on display. Every word I said. Every forkful of pasta. Every sip of wine. I was hyper-aware of myself, and of Daniel watching me. "You look beautiful," he said after the appetizers came. "I mean it. I miss this." Something inside me snapped. "You miss this?" I repeated, too loudly. He blinked, startled. "Yeah. I mean, us. What we had. And what do you think this is now? A dress rehearsal?" "Lena," he said, trying to stay calm. "I'm just saying I want to get back to where we were. We were nowhere, Daniel. We were never anything because I told you from the start I wasn't ready. I said it over and over and you still," I stopped, breath catching. "You still waited around for me like I'd magically wake up ready to play house." His eyes narrowed. "I didn't wait around. I showed up. Every damn day. For you. Because I thought there was something real here." "You think showing up and touching me every time I look sad is the same as being seen?" He went quiet then. His jaw tightened. His hands clenched around the base of his wine glass like he was grounding himself. "You push me away," he said slowly, "then get mad when I stop trying." I opened my mouth to say something, I don't even know what, but it all collapsed. My chest clenched. Tears rose before I could stop them, hot and embarrassing. I hated crying in public. But there I was, crying into a linen napkin while people pretended not to stare. "I don't know what I'm doing," I whispered. I thought I needed time. I thought I needed to figure myself out after all the guys I gave myself to for the wrong reasons. But now what? I shook my head. "Now you don't even want me anymore." His expression cracked then, just a flicker. Something between heartbreak and exhaustion. "You told me not to want you, Lena. You literally told me you weren't ready." "I wasn't. But now my voice broke. Now I think I am. But it's too late." He didn't say anything for a long time. Just looked at me like he was trying to piece together a puzzle he no longer had the heart to finish. When we got home, we didn't speak. I went to the bathroom and sat on the cold tile floor, hugging my knees like a child. The guilt came first. Heavy and familiar. Then the shame, not for the tears, but for how long I'd let everything simmer without naming it. How I thought control would keep me safe, but all it did was keep love just out of reach. I wanted him to chase me. To prove something I didn't even know I needed proved. But now that I'd finally turned around, he wasn't running after me anymore. It's been 3 weeks since the dinner. 3 weeks since I cried over mushroom risotto and ruined whatever it was we were still pretending to hold together. We didn't break up. But we also didn't fix it. We just faded. He still sleeps beside me. Still folds the laundry when I forget. Still takes the trash out on Tuesdays and brings home oat milk for my coffee without asking. But there's no warmth in the small things anymore, just habit. Routine. Muscle memory. He kisses my cheek in the mornings, but not my mouth. He says goodnight like a roommate, not a lover. And the space between us and bed has grown so vast I sometimes wonder if he's disappearing into it, slowly, night by night. I miss him. Not just who he was at the beginning, not just the comfort or the sex or the way he used to look at me like I was the only person in the room. I miss us in the in-between moments. The messy, quiet parts that used to feel safe. But I don't know how to reach for him anymore. Not when I spent so long flinching at his touch. Not when I spent months building walls with words like I need space, I'm not ready, I don't want to be a girlfriend right now. How do you take that back without sounding like a hypocrite? Without sounding desperate? One night, I come home late from work. I'm tired and wired and full of nothing. He's sitting on the couch, a bowl of cereal in his lap, watching a rerun of something that doesn't matter. He doesn't look up when I walk in. Just says, "Hey." Not "Hi, babe." Not "How was your day?" Just "Hey." And I realize, this is what emotional atrophy looks like. I sit beside him on the couch, careful not to sit too close. We both pretend to focus on the TV. At one point, I think I feel his knee brush mine, but it could have been an accident. He doesn't move closer. Doesn't touch me. He's hurting, too. I can see it now. Not loudly, not with raised voices or slammed doors, but quietly, in the way people hurt when they've given all they could and still weren't enough. And the worst part? I know he was enough. I just didn't know how to receive it. I told myself I was protecting him by holding back. That I was doing the right thing by not rushing into anything serious after the mess I'd made of myself in the past. But really, I was afraid. Afraid he'd eventually see all the versions of me I hadn't made peace with. Afraid I wasn't someone who could actually stay. Now I wonder if I ever gave him a chance to choose me, not the cool, emotionally distant version I let him date, but me. The one with the messy history and lingering shame and weird, tangled heart. I glance at him again. His jaws tight. His eyes tired. There's a twitch in his fingers, like maybe he wants to reach for me, too. But he doesn't. And I get it. He's not angry anymore. He's exhausted. I go to bed before him that night. Curl under the blanket and stare at the ceiling. In the dark, I hear the familiar sound of the light switch click. His footsteps, careful and slow. The mattress dips. He doesn't touch me. And I lie there, frozen between longing and regret. Maybe he's waiting for me to try. Maybe he's already halfway out the door in his mind. I don't know anymore. But what I do know is this: I'm tired of being afraid of love that's already in front of me. Tired of punishing myself for who I used to be. I miss him. I want him. Not just for the soft touches or the safety of routine, but for the way he stayed, even when I made it hard. And now that he's finally stepping back, I feel the ache in my ribs like a ghost pressing against skin. So tomorrow, maybe I'll reach for his hand. And if he takes it, really takes it, maybe we'll start over. Not perfect. Just real. The next morning, I made coffee before he could. I don't know why that felt important, maybe just to do something kind without asking what I'd get in return. He walked into the kitchen half awake, hair a mess, the sleep still thick in his voice. "You made coffee?" I nodded. "Yeah. Thought I'd beat you to it." He gave a small smile. Not warm. Not cold. Just there. We sat at the kitchen table in silence for a while, sipping slowly, the steam curling between us like a fragile peace offering. Finally, I said, "I haven't known how to talk to you." His eyes lifted. Tired, guarded. Yeah. I felt that. I think I was scared if I told you the truth, about how confused I was, how much I still carry, you'd change your mind about me. He didn't say anything. Just kept stirring his coffee, even though it was already mixed. I pushed on. "I told you I wasn't ready because I wasn't. I'd spent so long pretending I was okay with being objectified, with being temporary, that I didn't know how to be chosen. For real." His brow furrowed. "But I did choose you." "I know," I said, my voice cracking. That's what made it scarier. He let out a breath. Not angry. Just full of something that felt like grief. I waited, Lena, he said softly. Not because I needed sex or romance on a timeline. But because I believed you'd let me in eventually. And every time I tried, it felt like you were still waiting for something better to come along. Tears pricked behind my eyes. There was nothing better. I just didn't think I deserved you yet. He stood up then. Not to leave, but to walk around the table. And for the first time in weeks, he reached for me. He pulled me up into a hug. No urgency. No expectation. Just his arms around me, solid and slow. I pressed my face into his chest and let myself cry. Not because I was sad, but because I finally felt safe enough to. When he kissed the top of my head, I realized, this wasn't passion. It wasn't fire. It was love in its most patient form, the kind that doesn't knock on the door every day forever, but waits a little while to see if you'll open it. When we pulled apart, he looked at me with something quiet in his eyes. I don't know if we can get back to what we were, he said honestly. But I'm willing to figure out what we could be. So we made a deal, no pretending. No more fear as an excuse. If we couldn't find our way back emotionally, we'd stop forcing the physical. And if we needed to relearn each other, like strangers, slowly, we would. Later that night, he slept beside me again. Not touching. Not expecting. But this time, I turned toward him. And I reached for his hand. You know, I used to think not being ready was a noble thing to say. Like it meant I was self-aware. Emotionally intelligent. Someone who knew better than to jump into something too soon. But what I've learned, what I'm still learning, if I'm being honest, is that not ready can also be a hiding place. A padded room you build inside yourself, where you can sit safely with your wounds, and no one can touch you. No one can hurt you. No one can love you, either. I spent years giving pieces of myself to men who didn't ask for more. Who didn't want more. Who only wanted the parts one was willing to part with, my body, my banter, my image. And when it was over, I could walk away feeling in control. I could say, see? Nothing stuck. I'm still whole. But that's the lie. Because something always sticks. And sometimes, it's not a person. It's a pattern. When Daniel came along, I told him I wasn't ready. And I believed it. I had been in my 304 phase, that messy, disconnected version of womanhood people either fetishize or shame. I was proud of how unbothered I was. Proud of how I didn't need anyone. But being untouched isn't the same as being whole. And being desired isn't the same as being seen. Daniel wanted to see me. That was the terrifying part. He wasn't trying to fix me or claim me or bend me to fit his needs. He just kept showing up. Day after day. And instead of letting him in, I froze him out. Because it's easier to say, I'm not ready, than to say, I'm afraid you'll leave once you see the full mess of me. It's easier to say, I'm protecting myself, than to say, I don't know how to let someone love me when I'm not performing. So I waited. I waited until the air between us got so thick with silence that even breathing next to him felt like trespassing. And by the time I realized I wanted him, really wanted him, he was already disappearing. Not in a dramatic way. He didn't slam doors or yell or pack a bag. He just got quiet. Stopped reaching for me the way he used to. Stopped trying to fill the space I kept insisting I needed. And I hated it. But I understood it. Because love doesn't wait forever. Even the kind that's patient. Even the kind that's real. It needs somewhere to land. And I never gave him that. So here's what I know now, readiness isn't a finish line you cross. It's a choice. Every day. A decision to risk being seen, fully, even when your skin still stings from old bruises. Even when you're scared that love might feel like ownership, or obligation, or loss. Because the real risk isn't being loved too much. It's being loved and never letting it in. I'm still figuring out how to love without armor. Still learning to speak before I shut down, to reach instead of recoil. And honestly, I don't know what Daniel and I are becoming. Some nights we talk like we used to. Some nights, we're quiet. But now, the silence feels less like punishment, and more like space. A place where something new might grow. I hold his hand sometimes without knowing what it means. And he lets me. That's love, too, I think. The letting. The not knowing. So if you're where I was, hiding behind not ready while your heart is breaking for connection, ask yourself, is it that you're not ready? Or are you just afraid of what it will mean to finally be seen? Because love doesn't knock forever. Eventually, it walks away, quietly, gently, like someone who knows they gave you everything you asked for, and nothing you truly needed.